Hello, this is Earl Purdy, and I want to welcome you to Hardcore Course in Miracles. Hardcore Course in Miracles. And I want to welcome you right here and right now, and we're going to hear about how to let go of the fear mind, how to let go of the mind that thinks it's separate, how to let go of the mind that thinks that it's afraid or angry or guilty. How do we get rid of that part of the mind? How does that work? We're going to talk about that. This is A Course in Miracles with Earl Purdy. We're going to start out with the theme of A Course in Miracles, which is Teach Only Love. Teach Only Love. Here we go.
Teach only love, for that is what you are. Only love, yes, that is what you are. Teach only love, that is what you are. And teach only love, everywhere you go. Teach only love, to everyone you know. Teach only love, love is what you are. Hey, yeah, let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Teach only love, each and every day. Teach only love, in your own special way. Teach only love, love is what you are.
Mighty companions, I'm Earl Purdy. I want to welcome you to Hardcore Course in Miracles. And we're going to talk about a section called the ego and false autonomy. The part of the mind that thinks it's afraid and on its own. How does that operate?
Only love, well, that is what you are. Teach only love, yeah, you're a shining star. Only love, love is what you are. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Teach only love, each and every day. Only love, in each and every way. Teach only love, love is what you are.
Teach only love, because that's what you are. A Course in Miracles says, teach only love, for that is what you are. And A Course in Miracles teaches that love is freedom. Love is freedom. So teach only freedom. Teach only love, because that is what you are. And we're coming together so that we can remove all the blocks to expressing love. Course in Miracles is about how can you undo all the thoughts, feelings, emotions that keep you from being happy.
Loving what you are, hey. Loving what you are. Love is what you are. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Teach only love, teach only love, yeah, yeah. Teach only
That was Brother John Christmas. If you want to get that music, you go to www.johnchristmas.com and you can download it for free. All these tunes are based on A Course in Miracles. I can't even put into words how grateful I am to you. I'm so glad to know that we are mighty companions. And we want to learn how to be more loving. We want to bring more sanity into this insane world. I'm so glad I know you. It's so good to not feel alone, to feel like there are other people that want to be conscious and want to be loving, and that there are other people who want to be completely awake and aware of their true identity as spiritual beings. I'm so glad that I have you and you have me, and that we're willing together to try to change our perception and change our minds. Do you know that we're beginning to recognize that we are the creators of our experience, and that we can change our experience by changing our minds? Do you know that the Course in Miracles teaches you how to see clearly, how to make the right choices that will bring you only joy and only peace? So I just wanted to start out in today's Hardcore Course in Miracles presentation. I'm Earl Purdy, and I just wanted to start out with gratitude. I'm so grateful and thankful to you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being willing to listen. Thank you for being open-minded. The Course in Miracles says in order to learn it, there's only a few things that you need to remember. Number one, you need to remember that you don't have to believe the ideas that I'm about to share with you. You don't have to believe the ideas in A Course in Miracles. You don't have to accept the ideas in the Course in Miracles. You don't have to do what? You don't have to accept the ideas in A Course in Miracles. You don't even have to welcome the ideas that I'm about to share with you. You don't even have to welcome the ideas from A Course in Miracles. Do you know that one of the most important things to remember is what? It's important to remember that some of the ideas, you may actively resist some of these ideas that I'm going to share with you from A Course in Miracles. You might resist some of these ideas. Some of the ideas may be quite startling. Some of the ideas may startle you. Some of these ideas may startle you. You're not asked to judge and analyze the ideas at all. Using the ideas will give the ideas meaning to you and will show you that the ideas are true. Using the ideas. But you have to hear them, and I'm the divine remembering coach, the divine repetition teacher. And in the Course in Miracles, the Foundation for Inner Peace version, we're going to be on page 56. Page 56. In the Course in Miracles text, we're going to be in chapter 4, The Illusions of the Ego. The Illusions of the Ego. Section 2, The Ego and False Autonomy. The Fearful Mind and False Autonomy. The Guilty Mind and False Autonomy. The mind that thinks it's separate and false autonomy. That's the same as saying the ego. The ego. What is the ego? The ego is your concept of yourself. Your ego is the part of your mind. The ego is the part of you that thinks you're separate from me. The ego is the part of you that believes you are separate. The ego is the part of your mind that believes you are separate. The part of you that believes that you are separate. The part of you that believes it could be guilty or fearful. The part of you that gets mad. The part of you that worries. The part of you that wants to be special. The part of you that believes that it's a victim sometimes. The part of you that believes that attack somehow will get you what you want. That's the ego. It's a thought. It's an idea of who you are, according to the Course in Miracles. It's a concept that you have of yourself. So when the Course says the ego and false autonomy, you could just as easily say the ego is false autonomy. And what is false autonomy? False autonomy is the belief that you are totally self-sufficient, that you're the one doing everything all by yourself on your own. So false autonomy is the belief that you are alone and you got to do everything alone and everything is up to you and that you got to do everything. The ego is false autonomy. So the Course in Miracles starts out by saying it's reasonable to ask. What is it that it's reasonable to ask? Well, it's reasonable to ask how your mind could have ever made the ego. How did your mind come up with the idea of fear and guilt and anger and separation? How did your mind ever even come up with the ego? That's what the Course says. That's a reasonable question. How did I even make up my ego? How did I even come up with the idea that I'm separate and different from everybody else? In fact, it's the best question you could ask. So what is the best question you can ask? The best question you can ask is how your mind ever made fear. How the mind ever made guilt or anger or grievances or lack. Those are all definitions of the ego. In my 40 years of studying and teaching the Course in Miracles, I've learned the different meanings and definitions that the Course in Miracles gives for the terms that it uses. So a lot of times I'll substitute the Course in Miracles definitions of words so that you can get a clear understanding of what that word means. And the ego is quite literally a fearful, frightening thought, among other things. So the best question you can ask is, how did I ever make my ego? How did I ever make any fear or guilt or sense of separation? But do you know there's no point in giving an answer in terms of the past? So I'm not going to try to answer how you could have made the ego in terms of talking about the past, because according to the Course in Miracles, the past does not matter. The past is what's gone. And the Course in Miracles teaches that what's gone doesn't matter. Do you know that the only thing that matters is now, right now? What happens right now? What you do right now? What we think right now? So the Course says there's no point in giving an answer in terms of the past because the past doesn't matter. And don't you know that history wouldn't exist if we were not repeating the same mistakes over and over again? The Course in Miracles says history wouldn't even exist if we were not still doing the exact same things in the present. So when you get into the Course in Miracles, is it talking about abstract thought? Well, yeah. It says abstract thought applies to knowledge because knowledge is completely impersonal. And so examples are irrelevant to the understanding of knowledge. See, knowledge and wisdom and truth applies to everybody equally. Anything that is of wisdom, anything that is of knowledge, abstract thought is completely impersonal. So examples are irrelevant to understanding abstract thought. So when you think about abstract thought, you want to think about something that's completely impersonal. It's thoughts that apply to everything and apply to everything equally. I love that. But you have perception, and I have perception. And the next line says, perception, however, is always specific. Perception is always specific. So that means perception is quite concrete. So perception is concrete. And when you look around you, when you perceive around you, it looks like there are very solid forms around you. It looks like perception is concrete. So the next paragraph is about to say something that's so powerful. So I hope you have your books. If you have it, we're on page 56, The Ego and False Autonomy, Chapter 4, The Illusions of the Ego, which is the false ideas of the fearful mind. The illusions of the ego That's just another way of saying the false ideas of the fearful mind. Do you know that the Course says when a person is afraid, their perception is distorted? When a person is angry, whenever they are not having peace, that they have distorted perception. So from a Course in Miracles perspective, it's no such thing as being angry and upset and right. That there's something about the way that you are seeing things that's incorrectly if you're upset and unhappy. So if you're upset and unhappy about something right now, if you're angry or depressed or upset about something or someone right now, the Course in Miracles would say there's something about that person or something about that situation that you are not seeing clearly. Because the ego, what is the ego? Well, the ego is basically the concept that you have of yourself and the concepts that you have of other people. So your ego is your idea of yourself. You tell me your idea of yourself. You tell me your opinion of yourself. You tell me who you think you are, and you're just describing your ego. The Course in Miracles says the ego is the self we make up. It's your conditioning. It's what you've learned and what you believe about yourself based on your past experiences since you were a child. It's your belief that you are separate. Separate from me, separate from God, we're separate from each other. So the Course says everybody makes an ego or a self for himself. So everybody makes up a self for themselves. I have a self that I've made up that's called Earl Purdy. And let me tell you, my perception of Earl Purdy is probably different from your perception of Earl Purdy. My concept of Earl Purdy is probably different from your concept of Earl Purdy. Your concept of yourself is probably very different from what my concept of you would be. So the ego is something that we make up. Your idea about who you think you are is just something you make up. And that's what it's saying. Everyone makes an ego or a self for himself, which is subject to enormous variation because of its instability. So I've made up a concept of myself, but it's unstable. So it's constantly changing. But I'll call it I'm in a different mood today, and you're in a different mood today. But our personalities constantly change because they're unstable. Because our personalities and our self-image is based on our concept of ourselves. And then the Course says your concept of yourself is constantly changing. So an ego is constantly changing. A personality is constantly changing. People seem to be constantly changing because their concepts of themselves and what's going on from moment to moment is always changing. So the Course says you make an ego for yourself, and then you make an ego for everybody else you perceive. And that ego is also equally variable. So not only do I make up a concept of Earl Purdy, I also make up a concept of everybody else around me. I want you to think about that for a minute. First, you make a concept of yourself, then you make a concept of everybody else. First, you have an opinion of yourself. You have a belief about yourself. And then you also have beliefs about other people. The beliefs you have about other people, that's the ego that you're making up for other people. When you say to yourself, my mother, well, all of your concepts about your mother, you're the one that's making those concepts up. So therefore, you are making an ego up for your mother. You tell me what you think about your father. You're telling me the ego that you made up for your father. And you're basically describing to me the opinion that you have, or your interpretation of the experience you had with somebody else. So you make up an ego for me, and you call that how you see Earl Purdy. And then you also make up an image for yourself, and then that you call that you. You call that how you see yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm going to take this slow because this chapter is so important because it describes exactly what the Course in Miracles means by the ego, or the fearful part of our mind, or the part of our mind that keeps us upset. So don't make it complicated, because it's not about analyzing. It's about hearing what it's saying. So what is it telling us? It's telling us that you make up an opinion of yourself for yourself, but you also make up an opinion of everybody else around you. And because your opinions and beliefs about other people are always changing, these opinions, this ego that you're making up is totally unstable and it's always changing. So do you know that if you're wondering why a person is moody, a person is moody because they're having constantly changing interpretations of who they are. One minute I think I'm a cool person that's really loving. Next minute I think I'm a depressed person. The next minute I think I'm a happy person. The next minute I think I'm a free person. The next minute I think I'm a really loved person. The next minute I think I'm not really loved. One minute I think things are going the way that I want them to go for me. The next minute I think they aren't going the way I want them to go for me. I have a constantly changing perception of myself, and that constantly changing perception of myself is the ego. And do you know you're doing the same thing with everybody else? You are making up everybody else's ego. When you have an opinion of me and you don't even talk to me about it, and you have an opinion of me, that is the ego you've made up for me. That's the ego that you made up for me. If you say Earl is a snobbish person, well then that's the ego you've made up for me. That's your opinion of me. That's your perception of me. So you just made up an ego for me. Then if you say, I used to think Earl Purdy was a really snobbish person, but now I think Earl Purdy is a really cool guy. Well, then you just made up a new ego for me. You just made up a new concept of me. But did you notice something very interesting about that? You weren't actually talking to me at all. You're not actually talking to that person necessarily that you're having the opinion about. So the Course in Miracles says you make an ego for yourself, you make an ego for somebody else, and the interaction of the ego you've made up for yourself and the ego that you've made up for everybody else, that interaction is going to alter your ego and the other person's ego. And the reason why you can change your opinion of me and you can change your opinion of yourself is because the ego wasn't made by God. God did not make the ego. Love did not make the ego. Our Creator did not make the ego. So God did not make your personality. God is not making your concept of yourself. God is not making your opinion of yourself. The Creator is not making your perception of me. The Creator is not making your perception of everybody else. And because the concepts that you have of yourself and the concepts that you have of everybody else, since it was not made by love, since it was not made by the unalterable, since it was not made by God, then it constantly changes. One example, do you know that one example that I think about is that, let's say I'm upset with my brother, and I say to myself, boy, my brother sure is selfish. Okay, so I'm thinking about the ego that I made up for my brother, which is he's selfish, which is just my perception and my opinion, by the way. Then I say to myself, well, my brother really did loan me his car, and he's done some really loving things for me. So maybe my brother isn't such a bad guy after all. Okay, now I've changed my perception of you again, and I've given my brother a brand new ego. This ego, I say, is unselfish. But all of that interaction has taken place in my mind. So I got upset with you without talking to you. I forgave you without even talking to you. So it's important to realize that this alteration can and does occur and take place in the mind as much as when it involves physical proximity. I can be in your physical presence and have opinions and ideas of you that I've made up in my mind. I can be in your presence and have ideas and beliefs about myself that I've made up in my mind. And in our physical interaction, we can change our thoughts about each other, and we can change our opinions about each other through our physical interaction. But do you know that you change your opinion of me just as much by thinking about me and what you tell yourself when you're thinking about me? And you might even relate to me as if what you think about me is true, but you made the whole thing up in your mind. And everything you think about yourself is something that you made up in your mind. So everything that you're feeling right now, everything that you're experiencing right now, you're making it up by the meaning that you're giving to it in your mind. So thinking about somebody's ego is just as effective in changing your relative perception of somebody as physical interaction with somebody can change your perception of that person. Because the ego is nothing but your concepts, your perceptions of yourself and your perceptions of other people. And that could be no better example. There can be no better example that the ego is what? The ego is only an idea. The ego is an idea. The ego is only an idea. Your ego is an idea. It's nothing but a belief. It's nothing but a concept that you have about yourself that you have agreed is you, and then you deal with that idea that you have about yourself as if it is real. So ever since you were born, everybody's been telling you what is reality, what is the truth, and what you are. And when you accept those ideas and beliefs, then that becomes your perception. That becomes your ego. That becomes your concept of yourself. So the ego is just an idea. Your fears are ideas. Your guilt is an idea. Any sense of lack is an idea. Your anger is an idea. Your joy is an idea. Your happiness is an idea. Your peace is an idea. It's a thought. It's an idea. It's a thought. It's not a fact. Your ego is not a fact. Any kind of fear or insecurity or any sense of being unloved, or that's not a fact. That's an idea that you're having. That's a thought that you're having. So what would be a really good example of how the ego was made? What would be a really good example of how fear and separation and anger and sickness and all those types of things, how are they made? Well, he says your own state of mind is a good example of how the ego was made. When you threw knowledge away, it was just like you never had knowledge. You see, the Course in Miracles says that we really know the truth. Deep down inside, we really know the truth. We really have knowledge, but we've forgotten it. And we threw it away. Like if I say to you, you are totally innocent. You're totally innocent. You're sinless. You're guiltless. You're innocent. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're powerful. You're powerful. You're unlimited. You're unlimited. You only deserve love. You've never sinned. You are guiltless. You are free. You are whole. You are abundant. Okay, I'm telling you that right now. But you could throw those thoughts away. You could go, oh man, this is just a scam. You're just trying to get my money. You're just trying to tell me something you think I want to hear. In other words, that's knowledge. That's the truth. The truth is, according to the Course in Miracles, you are divine. You are a spiritual being. You are an unlimited being. You are more than a human being. You are more than a body. You are more than a body. You are more than something that's born, lives a little while, grows old, and dies one day. You are more than you think you are. But you've forgotten who you think you are. You've forgotten who you are. That's what the Course means when it says we threw knowledge away. We threw the knowledge away. We threw the knowledge of who we truly are away. And once you throw the knowledge away, it's as if you never had the knowledge. So if I throw away my knowledge of God, if I throw away my knowledge of love, then it's just like I never had love. And this is so apparent that you need only recognize it to see that it happens all the time. It happens all the time that we used to know something and we've forgotten about it. And since we've forgotten about it, it's almost as if we never knew it. So if you can throw knowledge away, if in the past you threw knowledge away, if in the past you really knew something and you just forgot about it, well, if you did that, if you can do that right now, why is it surprising that you could have thrown knowledge away in the past? If sometimes I don't remember what's going on right now, then why is it surprising to me that I probably forgot something in the past also? So surprise is a reasonable response to something that's unfamiliar. It's okay to be surprised about something that you're not familiar with. But why are we acting surprised that we could forget the truth, that we could forget something, and it's almost as if we never knew it or never had that knowledge? So don't forget that the mind doesn't have to work that way. You don't have to throw away the knowledge of how wonderful you are. You don't have to throw away the knowledge of God. You don't have to throw away the knowledge of your perfection and your beauty and your innocence. You don't have to throw the knowledge of how wonderful you are away. You don't have to throw away your knowledge of the truth. The Course in Miracles says, but don't forget that the mind doesn't have to work that way. Even though the mind might be working that way right now, even though you might be throwing away knowledge right now, even though you might be criticizing yourself or judging yourself or putting yourself down in some ways, or somebody else might be doing that, your mind doesn't have to work that way. If you're worried, if you're concerned, if you're unhappy, if you're upset, if you're angry, your mind doesn't have to work that way. Your mind doesn't have to work that way. So what is it that I want you to think about right now? I want you to think about the love that animals have for their offspring. Think about how much an animal loves their offspring. And think about the need that animals feel to protect their offspring. Like here in Colorado, the worst thing you can do is walk up on a bear cub because you know that their mother is somewhere around and that mother is going to attack you to protect their cub. So think about that. Think about how much you love whatever you create, how much you love whatever you make, and how much you feel that need to protect what you've made. So the Course in Miracles says that's because the animals regard their offspring as part of themselves. So whatever you make up, whatever you create, whatever you think, you will see that as a part of yourself. So if you come up with a way of thinking about yourself, then you're going to think it's part of yourself. So you're not going to dismiss something that you consider to be part of yourself. If you think anger or guilt or grievances or separation is part of yourself, then you're not going to dismiss it. So you have made up an ego. You have made up a concept of yourself. You have made up your opinions and you've made up your beliefs. And you react to those opinions and you react to those beliefs much the way that God reacts to you. You love your ego, you protect your ego, and you have charity towards your ego. You love your opinions, you love your perceptions, you love what you think is true, and then you protect it. Because you believe that who you think you are is really who you think you are. And so you're going to protect that idea of yourself, according to the Course in Miracles. So how does God relate to you? You are a creation of God. You are a creation of love. So how does love respond to you? Well, with love, protection, and charity. God reacts to you with love, protection, and charity. That's how your Creator relates to you. Your Creator wants to love you and protect you and give to you just as much as you want to love and protect your children, your offsprings. Or, as the Course was saying, you want to love and protect your ego, whoever it is and whatever it is you think you are. If you think you are a woman, and I tell you that you are more than a woman, that you are truly a mind, that you are spirit, and that you are truly consciousness and awareness, and you really believe you are a woman, or you really believe you are a man, or whatever your gender identification is, then you are going to want to protect that idea. You might find yourself resisting the idea that you are not a woman, because that's your concept of yourself. And do you know, your concept of yourself is your ego. Your beliefs are your ego. The beliefs you have about me is the ego you are making up for me. This material is so intense. And so it says your reactions to the self you made are not surprising. The way you react to your own ego, your own beliefs, the Course in Miracles says it resembles in many ways how you're going to one day react to your real creations. Because your real creations are just as timeless as you are. Your real creations are eternal. Your real creations last forever. The creations of who you really are, that spiritual being that you really are, that's a creation. A creation is an extension of who and what you are. And the Course in Miracles says your real creations are just as timeless as you are. Your real creations are just as eternal as you are. And one day you're going to love your real creations. You're going to protect your real creations. And you're going to be very charitable towards your real creations. So what is it that the question is not? So what is not the question? Well, the question is not how you respond to the ego. The big question is not how should I respond to the ego? How should I respond to the ego? How should I respond to somebody else's personality and ego? How should I respond to my personality and ego? The question isn't how you respond to the ego. The question is, what do you believe you are? The question is, what do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? That's the question. Not how are you going to respond to your fear, or your anger, or your guilt, or your ego. The Course in Miracles is saying, no. The real question is what you believe you are. Do you believe you're a spirit? Do you believe you're unlimited? Do you believe that you are a creator? Do you believe that you are responsible? Do you believe that you are loved? Do you believe that you are loved? Do you believe that you're eternal? Do you believe that you were created by an unlimited creator? Or do you believe that you are a separate body that lives a certain amount of time, that's out here trying to make it, and sometimes sees itself as a victim of everything, broken into by periods in which you seem to have a pretty good time, you go to a party, you enjoy yourself, you have a vacation, you hang out with people that you like. Do you see, what are you? What do you believe you are? Because belief is an ego function. Belief is something that the ego does. Now, what does that mean? Well, as long as your origin is open to belief, then you're regarding your origin from an ego viewpoint. You are regarding your origin from a false viewpoint. So what does that mean? It means that beliefs are not absolute certainty. So telling me what you believe you are, that doesn't necessarily mean that is actually what you are. So belief is an ego function. And right now, the Course in Miracles is saying your origin is open to belief. Right now, you're trying to understand exactly who you are, exactly where you came from, exactly what you are. So the Course in Miracles says belief is not coming from your real self. Belief is coming from your ego. It's coming from the part of you that's not absolutely sure about what you are. Take a breath for a minute, because this is a lot. It's really not as complicated as it seems like it is. What I basically have said so far is you have opinions about yourself and you have opinions about other people. Some of those opinions you think about and you change your mind about a person just by thinking about them. Sometimes you change your mind because you're having a physical exchange with somebody. But the fact that you can change the way you feel about somebody just by what you tell yourself means that none of that is actually real, because it's just your opinions and your beliefs about you and about somebody else. Then it told us that, but whatever your concept of yourself is, whatever your belief about yourself is, you're going to love it and you're going to protect it because you made it up. And it says whatever you make up, you're going to want to protect. But but then it also told us our Creator created us, and our Creator loves us, and our Creator has the same attitude toward us, that it wants to love us, and it wants to protect us, and it wants to be charitable to us. But the real question is, what do you believe you are? Do you believe that you are a spiritual being, or do you believe you are a body? Do you believe you are joined, or do you believe that you are separate? Do you believe that you are innocent, or do you believe that you are guilty? So what do you believe you are? Okay. So what's going to happen when teaching is no longer necessary? What's going to happen when it's no longer necessary to teach you? Well, you're going to merely know God. See, when you know God, you know everything. But once you make reconnection and remember your connection to your source again, then teaching you will no longer be necessary. Why is it that teaching you would no longer be necessary? Because once you remember your connection with God, you'll have all knowledge. And since you have all knowledge, it won't be any need to teach you anything because you'll know everything. And when you know everything, you feel totally loving and you feel totally safe and you feel totally peaceful. So when teaching you is no longer necessary, you're going to merely know God. You're just going to know love. So belief that there's another way of looking at things is the loftiest idea that the ego thinking is capable of. So the highest level of consciousness that we can go to as separate human beings, that's just another way of saying ego. Ego is just a person who thinks that they're a separate human being. He says, well, the loftiest idea of which ego thinking is capable is the idea that there's another way of looking at things. So if you are telling yourself there's another way of looking at things, then that's the highest level of consciousness that the human mind is capable of, is to believe that there's another way of looking at something. Because it contains a hint. A hint of what? A hint of recognition that your ego is not the self. So when you believe there's another way of looking at things, when you believe that there's another explanation, when you believe that there's another interpretation of something that you could be using, that's really a hint that you are beginning to recognize that your ego is not you. 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 Your fears are not you. Your fears are not you. Your critical nature is not you. Your anger is not you. Any depressing thoughts that you have are not you. Anything that you tell yourself that makes you think that you are not beautiful and innocent, that is not you. Anything that tells you that you're anything other than divine is a lie. So your ego is not you. The ego is not you. Your fearful thoughts are not you. That conversation in your head is not you. It's not you. Your ego isn't you. Your ego isn't you. This is not Earl Purdy. This body is not Earl Purdy. My perception of myself is not me. I can have perceptions of myself and thoughts about myself that are not true. And you can have perceptions and thoughts about yourself that are not true. That's the ego. The ego is nothing but the thoughts that you have about yourself that are not true, that are not based on who you really are. So the fact that you're studying A Course in Miracles means that at some level you're beginning to recognize that you might be more than you think you are, that you might be more loving, that you might be more intelligent, that you might be more forgiving than even you think you are. So your ego is nothing but a way of thinking. It's just the way that you think. The ego is a thought system. The ego is a thought system based on fear and separation and anger and guilt, broken into by periods in which it seems like you're having a good time. So undermining the ego's thought system must be perceived as painful. Undermining all of your false ideas must be seen as painful. So do you know the Course in Miracles just told us, look, if you're really trying to change your mind and you're really trying to undermine your old ways of looking at things, then sometimes it's going to be painful. I'm just going to be straight up with you. As you begin to let go of your concepts and ideas and beliefs that limit you, it's going to be seen as painful, even though this is anything but true. It is not painful to let go of anger, guilt, grievances, fears, insecurities, and lacks and sickness. But it's going to seem that way because you have been identifying with everything that you've learned and all the experiences that you've had as long as you've been on the planet. Now you think that is you. Here's a great example. Would you like to have a great example? It says in the next line, babies scream in rage if you take away a knife or scissors. Although the baby may well harm themselves if you don't take away the knife and scissors, the baby screams in rage when you take away the knife or scissors. But you're taking away the knife or scissors because you know the baby might harm himself if you don't take away the knife or scissors. So in this sense, you are still a baby. Do you know that you are still a baby? What does that mean, Course in Miracles, telling me that I'm a baby? You are still a baby. You're just like a baby. The baby will scream when you try to take the knife or scissors away because you know that the baby might hurt themselves. Well, the same thing is true in your relationship with God. That you might have a knife relationship, a knife job, a scissor relationship, or a scissor financial situation. You may very much want to cling to your knife or scissors that could harm you. And so therefore you get upset when you think you want something that's really not good for you, but you think it is, and then you ask God to be in charge and you give it to God, and then that thing seems to be taken away. That's just like you taking away the knife and scissors from a baby that might hurt themselves. Holy Spirit, your higher power, may take things away from you that you are hurting yourself through that you really think is really cool, like the baby thinks a knife or scissors are really cool. So a lot of times when you say you give things up to God and you have a desire and you give it up to God and it doesn't happen, it's because you don't know your own best interests. And so you might be asking for the very relationship, job, house, situation that could be the worst thing that you could have ever done to yourself because you don't have any real sense of real self-preservation. So what does that mean? What does that mean, Earl, when you say, I don't have any real sense of real self-preservation? It means you're likely to decide that you need precisely what would hurt you. You are likely to decide that you need just the person that's the worst person in the world for you. You may decide you need the job that's the worst job you could ever give yourself. You are likely to decide that you need separation, which is absolutely the worst thing that you could do to yourself, is to want to be separate from God and separate from all that is. So the Course in Miracles is saying, you know what, you guys need to understand that you're likely to decide that you need precisely what would hurt you the most. Not just what would hurt you, but what would hurt you the most. Yet whether or not you realize it now, 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 you have agreed to cooperate. You don't know it, but you have agreed to cooperate. You have agreed to cooperate in what? You have agreed to cooperate in the effort to become both harmless and helpful. So what is it that you really want to become? You want to become harmless. You want to become a person that is absolutely safe to be around. You want to become the most peaceful, safe person that anyone could ever be around. And you want to be the most helpful person that anyone could ever be around. And you don't recognize it right now, but you've agreed to cooperate in an effort to become both harmless and helpful. And these are attributes that go together. Harmless goes with helpful. Helpful goes with harmless. So you're not a helpful person if you're raising hell all the time and a person is attacking people all the time and projecting guilt and blame on people all the time. Then you're not being a harmless person. You're not being a helpful person, because these attributes have to go together. And even your attitudes toward being helpful and harmful your attitudes toward being helpful and harmless are necessarily conflicted. You know what I mean? Sometimes I do want to be helpful, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to be harmless, and sometimes I want to go off. So my attitudes toward being helpful and toward being harmless, the Course says these attitudes are necessarily conflicted because all your attitudes are ego-based. Every attitude that you have is based on the idea that you're a body and that you're separate. The Course in Miracles says all your attitudes are based on the idea that you may think that at some level you're a body and that you're separate. But this won't last. So being in conflict is not going to last. Your conflict is not going to last. Your conflict is not going to last. Your conflict and fears are not going to last. Your unhappiness is not going to last. The lack that you think you may have in some way is not going to last. Anything other than love, anything other than God, anything other than truth will not last. So let that sink in. Let the conflicts you feel, the upset and the pain that you think you feel, it's not going to last. So what is it that you need to do? You need to be patient. You need to be patient a while. You need to be patient a while. So how do you do that? Well, it says it right here. Be patient a while and remember. That's why I said I'm the divine remembering teacher. The Course in Miracles says, be patient a while and remember. So what is it that you need to remember? What is it that you need to remember? You need to remember that the outcome is as certain as God. God is certain. Our Creator is certain. Love is certain. You can always depend on God. You can always depend on Spirit. You can always depend on love. You can always depend on what's real. You can always depend on what's real. So the outcome is as certain as God. The outcome is as certain as God. God is certain. God is real. God never fails. Now, could you have the perception that God isn't real? Can you have the perception that God fails? Yes, you can make up an ego for God. You can make up your idea of what you think God is, and then you can react to the idea that you've been taught and experienced God as being. That's why so many people have so much resistance to the Christian terminology of the Course in Miracles. It's because they are thinking about their past learnings about God and about Christ and what they learned as children in church. And they're projecting those old incorrect perceptions of God onto the Course in Miracles and Jesus. And then all of a sudden they hear the word Jesus and they get upset, or they hear the word God and they get upset, or they see the terminology in the Course in Miracles and get upset. That's because you're making up an ego for the Course in Miracles. You're making up your perception of what it means, and then you're reacting to the erroneous perception that you have based on what you went through or learned in the past. That's what the Course is saying. Your perception of God, if you have a perception of God that you have a lot of resistance to and a lot of fear and upset about, it just means you're reacting to the God you've made up, to the ego God that you've made up. And that's not really God. That's not really the Creator. The Creator is totally loving and totally lovable and loves you and protects you. And is trying to give you another way to look at things right now so that you can finally be in communication with your higher self. Because what the Course in Miracles does is it gets rid of the blocks that keep you from hearing the truth that's within you. So I'm going to do a quick recap in just a moment. I'm Earl Purdy. I'm a full-time teacher of A Course in Miracles, and I appreciate you so much. And if you'd like to make a financial expression of appreciation, then all you have to do is go to my website, earlpurdy.com, www.earlpurdy.com. And you can make a financial expression of appreciation there, or you could use Venmo, or you could use the Cash App, or PayPal, or Zelle. All you need is my email address, and my email address is earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. Those of you who would like to go deeper and like to go deeper with me and take advantage of the fact that I've been teaching and studying this and learning this and devoted to this for over 41 years, and you would like me to be supportive of you and to help give you some insight about how to apply this to some situation or circumstance or relationship that you're dealing with right now, that you know you're ready for a change, then you should have a clarity session with me. And these one-on-one clarity sessions That's what they're for me to work with you personally with your particular issues that you would like to look at. Or you can also use me as a personal mentor in order to be able to study and apply the Course in Miracles and understand the Course in Miracles better if you're going to understand it. So I'm available. So if you'd like to have a clarity session with me, then go to my website and look under the Clarity Session tab. It will give you all the details, and you can self-book a session with me right online. And I've also been a professional astrologer and numerologist, soul purpose, higher consciousness, how you can have an easier life, astrologer and numerologist. And I'm also available to also give interpretations of your particular chart for those who are open-minded to that. On Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, we do Hardcore Course in Miracles on the Earl Purdy page, on Facebook. On Sundays at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, I do another Facebook Live, a Course in Miracles class online and also in front of a live audience here in Denver, Colorado at 1555 Race Street. So I'm here to be truly helpful. That's what I'm here for. That's what I wanted to be. And I'm here especially for those who love the Course in Miracles and they'd like to really, really be able to practice it and use it and apply it. That's what I'm here for. I want to be an instrument of love and help and healing. So let's do a quick little review so that we can try to remember. Because remember, the name of the game is what? Remembering. And you want to read this section, The Ego and False Autonomy, in A Course in Miracles, that's on page 56. So what is the best question that you can, thank you, Crystal. So what is absolutely the best question you could ask yourself? Ask yourself, how did I make my ego to begin with? How did I make the ego to begin with? And to realize that there's no point in giving the answer in terms of the past. Because really we're making the same mistakes now that we made in the past, and that's why we are still experiencing the same things now that people experienced in the past, which was fear and separation. It's important that we realize that you make up an ego for yourself and you make up an ego for everybody around you, which you call your opinion and perception of yourself and the opinion and perception of the other person. And since your opinion and perception of yourself is always changing, and your opinion and perceptions of other people is always changing, then it looks like you are always changing, and it looks like the other people around you are always changing. So thinking about a person changes the way you feel about them and the way you see them, as much as being in their physical presence and talking to them can change the way you feel and how you think about them. You made up your opinion of who you think you are, and you also you're making up your opinions of everybody around you. And since you made them up, you're going to want to protect them. You're going to love your ideas and your beliefs. And the Course in Miracles is telling us that you used to know the truth. You used to know absolutely that you were nothing but love, that you are spirit, and you forgot it. You just forgot it. You threw it away, you forgot the truth. But that doesn't mean it's gone. Your mind doesn't have to work like that. Your mind doesn't have to forget the truth. Your mind can actually remember the truth. But you got to think about how much you and everybody else around you love their beliefs, love their thoughts, love their opinions, because they see it as being a part of themselves. So the real question is what? What is the real question? Well, the real question is not how you're going to respond to your ego or somebody else's ego. The real question is what you believe you are. Let me ask you now, what do you believe you are? Let me ask you, what do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? Do you believe that you're innocent, or do you believe that you're guilty? Do you believe that you are abundant, or do you believe that you are lacking? Do you believe that you are healthy, or do you believe that you are sick? Do you believe that you are peaceful, or do you believe that you are attacking? What do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? Do you believe you are love, or do you believe that you are fear? Do you believe you are free? Do you believe that you are free? Or do you believe that you are limited and in bondage? What do you believe you are? The fact that you believe that there's another way of looking at things, the fact that you're even willing to tune into this presentation and listen to these ideas means that you're beginning to recognize that you are more than an ego. You are more than a fearful, separate being. You're beginning to remember who you are. You're beginning to remember who you are. Do you know that undermining your ego's way of thinking will be perceived as painful sometimes, but it's really not? So remember the analogy that I gave about babies and how they scream when you take away something from them that they might hurt themselves because they don't really have any real sense of real self-preservation. A baby really doesn't know how to really take care of themselves. Well, do you know that that's what the Course in Miracles is saying? It's saying that we don't have any real sense of self-preservation. And the things that would hurt us the most, and the people that would hurt us the most, and the relationships that would hurt us the most, and the ambitions that would hurt us the most, and the desires that would hurt us the most, sometimes that's exactly what we want the most. And out of God's love for us, out of our Creator's love for us, and out of our Creator's desire to protect us and love us, then it may take away the very thing that you think you want, which is the worst thing that you could actually have. So just remember that you don't perceive your own best interests according to the Course in Miracles. That if you just think you're a separate human being in a world with a temporary life, that you don't really know what your own best interests are according to the Course. But if you want the Course in Miracles to work, you have to do the workbook. You have to read the material, remember the material, and apply the workbook lessons that are in the Course in Miracles to your everyday situations and circumstances. It's the application of the ideas. It's the application of the ideas that will give these ideas meaning and show you that they're true. So be patient. Be patient a while. Be patient a while. Be patient a while. And remember what? Remember that the outcome is as certain as God. Remember the outcome is as certain as God. Mighty companion, I can't tell you how much better I feel. I needed to hear this, listen to this, and watch this at least 4 times. Repetition, 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 repetition. And remember, the question is, what do you believe you are? What do you really believe you are? Remember, teach only love, for that is what you are. Love you, mighty companions. I look at all your comments, and I will see you next time. Sign up for my mailing list on my website if you get a chance.